Inside Out 2 saved the box office this summer, but I don't think it needed saving. Inside Out 2 had a great opening weekend, getting about $150 million in and setting multiple different records for both movies and animated movies. For months now, everyone has been worried about the box office with the disappointed openings of The Fall Guy, Furiosa, and If. There were multiple sources and multiple people online saying like, "Oh, the box office is dead. Movie theaters are dead. It's all about streaming now." But now that Inside Out 2 happened and the weekend before, Bad Boys came out and also did really well, and now everyone is just like, "Oh yeah, the box office is back. It's not doom and gloom anymore." But even if Inside Out 2 and Bad Boys didn't open as well as they did, the box office was never in trouble. This industry's memory is very short term. Like last year, we had magnificent hits with like Barbie and Oppenheimer and Super Mario Brothers movie. And even this year, it hasn't been that bad. Doom 2 did well, Godzilla did well. Even original movies that have completely original stories are doing well at the box office, like Challengers and Civil War. Are people going to the theater as much as they did before COVID? No, not all the time, but there are a lot of different factors to that conversation rather than just, the movies are dying. Like we could talk all day about how movie theaters push for streaming killed the theaters and now they're slowly trying to bring back the audience. But that's not what I want to focus on today. Today, I want to talk more about how the box office is unpredictable and you can't really expect it to always work in your favor. A lot of these studios are going for these low risk movies and these guaranteed hits, and those don't actually happen. Those aren't a thing. There's no such thing as a low risk movie, there's no such thing as a guaranteed hit. So I wanted to break down a few movies that should have been surefire hits, but they weren't. Movies that are bad, movies that should have been good, and movies that are good. For instance, you can have a bad movie, but that movie still does very well at the box office. There are plenty of examples of that, but let's look at Transformers Age of Extinction. That movie is terrible. I have no problem talking trash about that movie. I usually don't like to talk trash about movies because I know how hard it is to make one, but that movie was really bad. However, it did $1 billion at the box office. That is the highest grossing Transformers movie to date. So you think, let's replicate that success. We can have a bad movie and still make a lot of money at the box office. It won't matter. But that didn't happen. Then they made Transformers The Last Knight, which did not do well at all. That was still a bad movie. I think it was worse. And it did so bad at the box office. That movie cost around $260 million just to make, and it only made $600 million. It bombed. So a bad movie can't always make money. Sometimes it can, but not all the time. And sometimes you have everything right on paper and it still doesn't work out. This happens with, I would argue, most movies. Most movies aren't trying to be bad. No one tries to make a bad movie. It's just making a good movie is a lot of work. It's really difficult, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Let's look at Baywatch from 2017. That movie made sense on paper. It was made during a time when a lot of studios were making these movies that were remakes of old TV shows into comedies. Look at 21 Jump Street from Phil Lord and Chris Miller. That movie did well critically and commercially as well, so why not try to replicate that success? So they set out to make Baywatch, a remake of an 80s TV show. And they had a good director. That director did Horrible Bosses. I personally love Horrible Bosses. It had star power. It had Dwayne The Rock Johnson. It had Zac Efron. It was made for an okay amount of money, around 60 mil, I think. And that movie unfortunately wasn't that good and people didn't come out to support it. So you can still have a movie where you try to do everything right and you still get a bad movie and then people don't go to see it. So now let's look at a movie that was working on paper. They actually made a great movie, which in itself is an accomplishment, and it still failed at the box office. Let's look at the movie The Nice Guys. Everyone on Reddit loves this movie. Like, you can find so many comments about they're like, "Oh, how did it not get a sequel? It's so good." Which is kind of ironic because it's also a Ryan Gosling movie and The Fall Guy is kind of suffering the same thing. I really do think that The Fall Guy in 10 years is going to have that same type of following where everyone's just like, "It was so good and like everyone enjoyed it. Why didn't they make several sequels? Why didn't people turn up at the box office?" I think it's going to do the exact same thing. We'll find out in like 10 years. But The Nice Guys, it had everything, right? It had a good director. It had Shane Black, who has had multiple success in multiple different films. It had really good actors. It had Ryan Gosling. It had Russell Crowe. It turned out to be a really great movie. It had a great story. It was made for a really good number, too, like $50 million reportedly. That's a great number to hit, especially with that star power and with that director. So it should have worked, but it didn't. It only made $62 million at the box office. Like, that is so bad. And there are so many movies that you can bring up that have these exact same arguments where they should have made a lot of money. They made sense on paper. It was a great movie and no one went and saw it. And this is all just to prove that there's no such thing as a guaranteed hit. There's no such thing as a low risk movie. They're all going to be risky. Sure, you can have sequels, you can have remakes, you can have the best movie on paper, you can have the best data to support that decision, you can have the best algorithms. You can use all that to still make informed decisions, sure, but everything is still a risk. Every movie is not a guaranteed hit, and that's what sucks about this because there's no guarantees because ultimately humans are unpredictable as well, despite what everyone says. So that's why I don't think we need to be all doom and gloom about the box office all the time. And when one movie doesn't hit well, we don't need to think that that is reflective of the entire industry. We've gone through this before. It's going to be okay. We unfortunately don't know what is going to be a hit, and that's okay. And because of that, studios shouldn't rely on these low risk movies that are supposed to be guaranteed hits. I really hope at the end of the day, they just make a good movie that they actually want to see on screen. If it fails, whatever, like at least you made something good. I know that's what I would want to do is if I had this opportunity to make a movie, which is very rare, I would just want to make something that I really wanted to see on screen. Create something you want to see instead of just following the trend. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, my name is Ben. I love talking about the entertainment industry. I work in the entertainment industry, so I know a few things about it, and I just love to talk about movies. I love to talk about TV. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, do the YouTube thing, and yeah, keep on watching. Thanks for coming out.